My guest tonight is a Gitxsan writer whose first book is a beautifully illustrated story about the life of the Sockeye salmon. Brett Huson is here. Welcome, Brett.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So tell us about this book. What is the story of the Sockeye Mother?
Basically, the story of the Sockeye Mother goes from the birth and to the death of the salmon. It goes through its life cycle. And I wrote this book because I wanted to give our young people the perspective of living on the land and to see how everything is truly connected.
It's beautifully illustrated. Tell us a bit about how that. Who's the illustrator and how did that come about?
I lucked out. I got to work with an amazing illustrator named Natasha Donovan, and she worked out of Vancouver and Washington. But I saw her artwork, and I really wanted to work with her, and she incorporated some of my artwork with hers, and it was just so beautifully done. I was very lucky to have her on the project and to work with her.
So you're a new writer, like a new published writer. I've known you as a communicator. You used to work here. How did this book come about? How did you suddenly find yourself an author?
Well, like I said, I really wanted to kind of give a different perspective out there for not only young people but everyone. And I wrote an article for Red Rising magazine, and the publisher happened to read the article, and then she got in touch with me and asked if I wished to turn it into a children's book. And so it kind of came about that way. I didn't really think that I would be authoring a book at the beginning, but then I thought it was a great opportunity to get out there to young people, to have my kids see something that they can relate to, and that's part of their culture, and it also showcases how Indigenous people lived with the land and how we evolved our life cycle around the salmons.
Yeah, so there's, this is a book about culture, this is a book about spiritual connections to land and animals, but there's also a lot of science in this as well.
Yeah, and growing up, I wanted to see how everything really worked, and I started to see a connection between our traditional knowledge and things that scientists were explaining. A lot of it they could have just asked us about.
There's a lot of that.
There's a lot of knowledge that we keep, and just because we're using different terminology and we don't necessarily know the terms that they use, we understand the land. We have our own biologists who understand things like the count of the salmon, they understand the cycle of the salmon, they understand where they're going, and we may not use the same terms because it's in our language, but we have that understanding. So there's a lot there that can be connected. We understood that the salmon in death contributed something to the world, and it made the world exist how it exists. But now with science we know that they were bringing nitrogen from the ocean, and they know it comes from the ocean. And that literally fertilizes all of the forest, and everything from the birds to insects to grizzly bears, they get all of that nourishment from the salmon, that nitrogen in particular.
Was science something that you were into since you were young?
Yeah, I grew up having a lot of input from my auntie and my dad. My auntie bought me a subscription to Equinox magazine. My dad always had popular science around. The things that I grew up loving, was related a lot to science because it was around me all the time, and also growing up being out on the land itself and seeing the way the world actually worked was very interesting to me, and it was something that I originally wanted to get into.
Were you a nerd?
Yeah, I was pretty nerdy. I was a geek. I'm guilty for sure. I was a geek to the nth level. I loved.
But that's not a bad word anymore. When people say they're geek or they're nerd or stuff like that, now it's like it's
a badge of honor.
It's a badge of honor. Yeah.
Yeah.
What about are you passing this sort of thing on to your children?
Yes, definitely. My kids, I really want them to understand that there's more to the world than just the human society. We've kind of put ourselves on a pedestal, and we believe ourselves to be above what the earth is. So we kind of forget our connection to the land. We kind of forget that, if that salmon disappears, there will be no rainforest in British Columbia, and that will severely impact the environment. So that's the kind of stuff that I try to impart on them. And also you try to take them out there as much as I can, but it's very different, we're not back home in the freedom of my territory.
You're living in Winnipeg.
Yeah, we live in Winnipeg now, so it's harder to get my kids out to free territory the way that I grew up.
Yeah, that's pretty heavy stuff for a kid. Is it? How do they take that?
They I think just speaking with your kids straightforward and, being honest with them about things, and so they understand that the world is like that. It's not that big deal for them. Once they grow up with it and it's natural for them, it kind of incorporates into their everyday life, and they get a different appreciation for the world.
Does yelling help?
Sometimes, yeah. Sometimes they just, you got to yell.
You just need to drill it into them a little bit, yeah. Yeah, no, it's an absolutely amazing book. You mentioned that you had a chance to work with an illustrator. Was the illustrator Indigenous?
Yes, she's a Métis artist, and but that originally that wasn't why I started to work with her. She's had some beautiful artwork, but it was just lucky that she was a Métis artist out of. Originally, she was living in BC, but I think she lives in Washington now, and just a hop, skip, and a jump across the border. So I'll be going to British Columbia in April to do a book launch there. I'll be touring the book, and she's going to be able to participate in that one. So that's it's awesome, and I really, I've like I said, I love her work, and I'm glad that she's going to be on for my future projects as well.
So, what's it like to how is it being received? Sorry.
I've been getting a lot of great feedback, not only from children, but I find a lot of adults are giving me a lot of good feedback. Adults are enjoying the information just as much as the kids are. So I get messages every day from people who bought it for their kids, but they read it themselves, and there's a lot of stuff that they didn't know really happened, or that they didn't know the salmon impacted the environment that much.
Okay, one last question, and this is a very serious one.
Shoot.
Who would win in a fight, a sockeye salmon or a pickerel?
Easily sockeye. Easily.
Those are fighting words, I think. Right. My guest tonight has been Brett Huson. His book, The Sockeye Mother, is published by
High Water Press.
High Water Press. Thanks for being such a good sport and coming on our show.
Thank you very much for having me.
Very, very special gift here for you. All guests on our show receive one of these.
Oh, yeah.
Soon to be a collector's item.
Yes.
Yes, the Laughing Drum canned luncheon meat. That is for you, my friend.